Hello, everyone, and welcome to Next Level Leadership. This is a live stream series to support leaders during this crisis. And today we begin with episode 1, The Crisis We're In, where Warren Rustand will share ways to leverage your mindset during this crisis to continue the momentum of your life. Wow, so many familiar faces here today. Many of us are EO Leadership Academy graduates. A big shout out to Jamie Duragi and Andrea Herrera and the EO Leadership Committee and the amazing leaders in all of us that have come together to level up our leadership in this crisis. Most of you have heard Warren's introduction before, and it goes something like this. Here's Warren. But for those of you that haven't heard and haven't seen or met Warren Rustand, he is the former CEO of Providence Service Corporation, served as a member of the board of directors for over 50 public, private, and non-for-profit companies. Warren served as appointments secretary to President Ford, global chairman of WPO, co-founder and dean of faculty at EO's Leadership Academy. Countless awards, Sports Hall of Fame, White House Fellow, but the award he treasures the most is Father of the Year in his hometown of Tucson, Arizona. This will be a conversation. Post your questions. We will not get to all of the questions, but they will be addressed in future episodes. And this live stream will live on this Facebook page, as will future episodes, so you can continue the conversation with Warren and each other. Thank you all for being here today. We are all in this together. Here's Warren.
Thank you, Winnie. It's great to be with you, and thank you so much for taking a part of your day to sit and have a conversation about this most interesting time in which we live. As we think about our mindset, it's really how do we leverage that mindset during a time of crisis, and this particular crisis that we're in, so that we can create momentum and sustain that momentum over a long period of time as we come out the other side of the crisis. And while it seems interminable today, and it seems like this crisis will never end, and it's probably going to get significantly worse before it gets better, the opportunity for us to put our minds in a particular place which will allow us to be successful is really important. So I'm grateful for you taking time just to sit and talk. And it's really a conversation, not a presentation. It's an opportunity for us to share some ideas. And if at the end of 20 or so minutes we can each take away an idea or two that maybe is helpful to us, then perhaps that's a good thing. I'm also mindful of the fact that as I looked over the list of people who are here, and there are hundreds, I suggest we're probably from about 30 or 40 countries, that we have different ethnicities, religions, languages, clans, tribes, families. And I want to be respectful of the things that I comment on so they will be applicable to any of us in any of our circumstances anywhere on the globe. One of the great things about the opportunity of traveling as much as I had is to find these great opportunities to meet people from all over the world who are unique in their own way and yet similar in so many other ways. So it's an opportunity for us to share this space today. As we think about where we are, I hope you're comfortable, because most of us are in our homes. I'm going to be in my office today, a place of comfort for me. And in this office, I have the things that make me comfortable. You do in yours or in your home. And if you look over my shoulder, probably as you're looking at Pierce's left shoulder, you'll see a bronze statue. And this is a bronze of a cowboy with his hat pulled down, his raincoat on, his work gear over his left arm, and he's striding into the storm. And I bought this particular bronze after a really hard time in my life when I was going through something similar to what we're experiencing right now, where everything seemed at risk. There were great challenges, where there were huge problems to overcome, and where the world seemed to be moving in a spiraling downward direction. That was a time when I took a company through bankruptcy, when it was really hard work every day. And I bought that as a reminder that each day I come in the office, I look at that, and the name of that is Weathering the Chores. It's the notion that regardless of the weather, regardless of the storm, we still have to put our hat down, face into the wind, our rain slicker on, and striding forward, striding into fear, striding into the unknown, striding into the tough stuff that we have to deal with. And that's really what we're in right now. You know, I've lived 70 plus decades. I've been around 7 plus decades, I should say. I've been around for a long time. In that period of time, there have been all kinds of difficulties and challenges. They never seem to go away. The one thing that's certain is change, of course, and the one thing that's certain is adversity and challenge. As we just think about the last 30 to 5 years, a time when you were growing up, building your businesses, getting married, raising families, doing those things, think of the challenges that you've already faced in light of what we're facing right now. There's SARS and MERS, AV, the bird flu, swine flu, YK, the technology bubble bursting, 2008 global recession. And now here we are at the beginning of a new decade, 2020, only the first few months, and we're in the middle of the coronavirus. And it's a pandemic, which means it's present everywhere in the world. It's a transnational disease. It knows no borders. Virtually every country in the world has been touched at this point in time by this, some more dramatically, some less so. It's there, COVID-19. And this feels different, doesn't it? Because all those other things I mentioned, we still had the freedom to move around. We still had the opportunity to go do the things we normally do in the course of our everyday life. But this feels different. And I think it feels different because we're constrained. We've been asked to shelter in place, stay home, stay off the streets, avoid social interaction and social contact. And that is unprecedented, at least in my life. And I suspect if you look back over your lifetime, you've never quite felt something like this. And while there will probably be millions of cases as this ramps up and hundreds of thousands of deaths, each death is a tragedy. Each death is difficult for that family, for that clan, for that tribe, for those people, colleagues and friends who knew them. And we have to treat with respect the whole issue of dying in our societies. We also have to recognize that in the wake of this, as we come out the other side, it's my observation that we're going to be in a situation where there's another global tragedy, and that's economic and financial. It's going to be an unbelievably challenging time. It's going to be catastrophic. And will we rebuild? Certainly we will. We will do well because that's the nature of who we are. All together in this conversation are really entrepreneurs, we're leaders. We accept the notion of challenge, although this seems like a particularly difficult one, because it threatens our families, it's our status quo. It threatens actually everything about us. And so as a result of that, we find ourselves in a financial and economic dilemma in virtually every society. And this means that people are being off. This means people are being furloughed. They may not have benefits. They may not have income. And these are first world problems that you are dealing with. Think of the third world problems. The people who don't have a place to sleep, who don't have food to eat. Think of how dramatic it is for the lives of so many in the world today. So I'd suggest to you, as the first learning of this discussion, the first step in understanding crisis is to dimensionalize it, to conceptualize it. It's to put our arms around it. It's to get a feel for its magnitude and then put that in a box, because that's what we have to deal with. That's our current state. Following thereafter is the notion that we have a lot of emotion around this. There's fear, anxiety, anger, frustration, insecurity, self-doubt. All of those things on us in different ways and at different times as we look at the crisis we're in. We have to deal with those. And how do we deal with them? Some suppress them, some of them. I would suggest that thing's more complex and difficult. So the second step is that we have to, with vulnerability, transparency, and honesty, share our emotions with the people who are closest to us, because they're experiencing the same thing. They have the same fears. And it's difficult for everyone in this environment at the present time because of the threat to our status, to what we've built and to who we are. But feel free to share those. And with children, share them in an age-appropriate way so that we don't scare them. But be sure to be honest in our relationships with our colleagues, our friends, so that all of us can really understand what we're going through. So the second step in crisis and putting our mind in a place to go forward is to acknowledge fears and to know that they're real, to be honest about sharing them. The next is this notion that we have to do our best when it matters, and it matters most right now. That people to us, at least in our environment, in our families, and they expect us to be strong, they expect us to do well, they expect us to be our best. And so we have to step up to that challenge. We have to be willing to do that. And so as we think about where we're headed, about perhaps put our mind in that place, how do we get good space? And so I'd like to ask you to think about, and I'll pick it up right now, think about and read it. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. I find it to be not only comforting, but exhilarating in its forwarding thought process about how we take our mind and place it in a good place. Now, you can see I thin books, right? I'm not too smart, so 50 pages is really good for me. So this is about a 30-minute read, but it'll give you hours of content and hours of thinking. As thinketh, we are what we think, and if we think only about our emotions, if we think only about our trials, that's where we'll be. And so we tend to think both upstream and downstream. If we look upstream, we see what's coming at us, and it's a torrent, it's a flood, it's challenging, and it's going to be hard for a while. As we look upstream, we see opportunity in Christ, that even though we're in a difficult state, we can visualize and begin to see that there are opportunities for us further down the road. We begin to get mental clarity about where we're headed. Our vision becomes more clear. And so the third step in understanding the ability to begin to refocus the mind and to change the mindset from what is to what will be, to what is happening to us, to what will happen to us, and begin to focus on that in a dramatic way. I'm reminded that Booker T. Washington, an author, writer, once said that men and women should be judged not so much by what they've accomplished, but rather by what obstacles they've overcome in that accomplishment. And we are in the midst of overcoming that obstacle. Change is inevitable. We've seen it through our lives. The choice. And our minds are in that interesting inflection point right now. Looking change that's coming up and the crisis, but progress is we have to make. Understand where we're going to be when we come through this process. So I wanted to share those three thoughts with you. The first is to dimensionalize the crisis itself and get our arms around that and understand that. The second is with our emotions and be honest and open in sharing them. And the third is to begin to refocus our mind at a future state. And when we have the opportunity to come out of this in a very successful. So when I turn to you for some questions that have come in the course of this discussion so that we can answer that which is on the mothers.
Great, thank you, Warren. Well, it's fantastic. We've got hundreds of people here, Greece, Brazil, the US, we've got China, we've got Asia, Bahrain, a group of entrepreneurs here for you today. The first question is from Apalu Kasich, and her question is, how do I deal with a partner that doesn't align with me on social distancing?
Look, we have to be loving and kind and thoughtful during this period, and we're going to have differences because people will view the crisis differently, and some will take it more or less seriously. There are still some groups, there are still some people who are avoiding social distance. In this particular case, it's about thoughtful and loving discussion, and it has to be considerate of the other views and opinions. But in the end, we have to protect our health, protect the health of our partners and significant family. And so protection is first items that we have to consider. This small matter, this is people who will be infected, hundreds of thousands who will die before this is over. And we have that we're taking care of ourselves in this process. So have those continued loving discussions. No magic bullet here to the panacea. in the discussion with your feelings, with strength.
Thank you, Warren. So just a few other, we have South Africa, Belgium, Rio, we got India. Amazing. Another question, this is 2 questions from Steve Satter. He says, how do we support entrepreneurs in living their truth? And number 2, how do we support the millions who lost their jobs?
Well, Steve, you and I are close friends. A lot of time together. We know each other. With you, I want to tell you, our friends, about you, because you had to experience your own truth. And you came to Tucson, Arizona, and sat on our couch in our living room and poured out your heart about your truth and the difficulty and challenges that you were having in your life at that time. A business stagnating, going through a very difficult for your children and best for your children. And you were open and honest in sharing that truth. And that's the first step. We have to share our truth. We have to share those beliefs that we have with others and be willing to take feedback on that. Be willing to embrace that discussion. You were willing to do that. It was through, and once we knew that, we were able to be in a way that changed everything about your life, your family, your business. Business that was once stagnant, now one of the fastest growing companies in America. A family that was challenging, now loving and close. You've done all the right things in pursuing this process, but you had to start by speaking, knowing who you are, peeling back the layers, and what you stand for and out. So that's the first step in sharing. Secondly, the second part of the question was, what do we do with all these people who have been laid off? I can tell you that since now I've received 302 phone calls. I've kept of them. Businesses, all of them facing really difficult circumstances. About a third of those are going to be closing their doors permanently, reopened. They've shut down their businesses, small to medium-sized entrepreneurs. All who work for them are now unemployed. The second group has enough cash to get through 30, 60, 90 days, but at about 90 days, they're going to have to make other choices and other decisions. And most of them have already reduced their payroll and their expenses by laying people off. And then we've got about a third that seem to be okay. They have enough cash resources, they're big enough, they're strong enough. Through this process, they can access other funds for their cash needs. We have to be very empathetic and sympathetic with people who have lost funds. Many will be able to get unemployment for a period of time. Those unemployment benefits are extended in some countries, but it's going to be difficult. We have to continue to communicate with them if we know them, continue to encourage them. But when we come out of this at the end, we should understand that there will be millions of people across the world who will be unemployed without any means of support and without government subsidies or support. And they will be looking for jobs. We'll have companies that are just emerging, that are just starting to move back up the economic curve, and hopefully we can serve as a source of employment. But this is a very difficult time for many people.
Thank you, Warren. We have a question from Ambreen Riaz. Do you think the world will place after COVID, and what can we do to ensure it does heal to be a better place?
Ambreen, you're one of my favorite people. We've worked together a lot over the years. You're fantastic. And absolutely, I believe the world's going to be a better place. I always believe the world's going to be a better place. I believe we're showing compassion and sympathy and empathy and caring at a time that we haven't seen in many of our countries for a long period. We've been living through a period and a decade of controversy and contention, politically, economically, socially. And yet I think we find in many areas of the world that there's a coming together, there's a together process, there's a take care of your neighbor, there's this notion of being concerned for. We've seen giving in extraordinary ways. That's who we really are at our core, I believe. I believe in our hearts we really are giving people, that we want to see others succeed and be happy, that in a crisis, we will step forward, just as this cowboy statue behind me. We'll step forward forward into the breach. We'll step forward into the wind, the rain, the turmoil, the difficult toughness. And when we do that, we help other people. So I think we have to be the beacons of hope. We're the leaders of businesses. We're the leaders in our communities. We lead our family. And we have to be the voice of reason, the voice of calm, the voice of assurance that we're going to be okay. We're going to, heck yes, this is tough. It's tough for all of us. None of us are immune from this. But it's how we handle it. We can't understand or even know why trials and adversity come, but it's how we respond that really makes us different, that separates. That's our humanity. That's who we are. Those are our hearts. And when we utilize that way, we make a difference for other people in the world. That difference may just be in our family. That difference may be with people we've had to lay off. The difference may be with the colleagues who are. We have to make that difference. We're those people.
Thank you, Warren. So we have Ireland, Philippines, El Salvador, Romania, Barcelona, San Francisco. And we have, most of us know this person, entrepreneur Neil. And his question is how to balance messages of hope and positivity with facing difficulties and bad news.
Well, Connor, you're one of the most optimistic people I know. You teach at the Global Leadership Academy. You're an amazing man. I love you. Thank you for all you've given to us as we teach leaders globe at the Global Leadership Academy, the regional leader academies. So thank you for your contribution. I think there is this contract, right? There is this notion that to be positive and strong, you have to recognize that there's despair and hopelessness in the lives of many people. Again, I think we want to share our message of hope. We want to share our feelings that things will get better. And you know what? Of all the circumstances that I mentioned, SARS, MERS, bird flu, Y2K, 2008 global recession, always get better. I just completed one of the 10 great years of this decade that we've had as we started 2020. And suddenly things have been so dramatic. 5 to 60 days, we're upside down. And not just individual countries, but through the world. There's a great despair. Do this. While we're confined, create certain opportunities to communicate people perhaps you haven't touched base with in a long time. Reach out if you've had an association. Reach out to employees and colleagues. Be the face of happiness, joy, and positivity. Now, even though we have our own doubts, optimism is a good. Be the sunshine in other people's lives. And what we find is when we're going through our greatest crisis, we're really having tough days. If we'll just serve someone else, it brightens us. It lifts the burden. So let's always reach out to others to help. And sometimes we can only do that through media today. So let's use the tools of social media. What a great blessing it is to have social media right now. So we can reach out and touch other people and help other people. I hope that is an adequate response for you, Con. I appreciate that we'll have to talk about it further.
Thank you, Warren. We have Miranda Nyman here from Tanzania. Hi, Miranda. And she says, Warren, you inspired me at RLA with the 10-10-10. This is very challenging for me during this current time, and I'm struggling to continue with this routine. What can I do?
Miranda, thank you. I love you. You're fantastic. I love your energy. You've been terrific, a partner to work with on the events we've been doing. Look, Miranda, it's hard because what happens in crisis, almost always we abandon our routine. We abandon our rituals and our patterns. And that's when we need them the most. Crisis was when we really have to be habitual of doing things that will help us get through the process. And so you have to double down. You have to really convince yourself, put your mind in a place that says, I need this every day. Dr. Evans, who's written multiple books, who speaks at the Leadership Academy, has said there are 3 things that have to get done during times of crisis, and certainly during other times as well. But 3 things we really have to pay attention to. The first is work out every day. Physically exercise every day. And we can do that in our own home. We can use stress. We can do exercise straight up, even if it's just in a small room. But we can do that every day. Work out each day. Have good time of crisis with the soft drinks. We go to easy foods. We go to a diet that we haven't had for a while, right? We go to junk food. So it's really important that we have good nutrition during this time. The third thing is sleep. Man, our mind is working like crazy, and it's sometimes hard to get sleep. So have a routine each evening before you go. Just as you have your 10 and 10 routine in the morning, have a short routine to get you ready to sleep. Soft music, meditation, easy yoga, read a good book, turn off your technology at least a half an hour before you go to bed. TVs, cell phones, computers. Get away from the blue light and the dopamine. Right? Put yourself in a position to sleep. So if we can do those three things, work out, eat well, and sleep well, it gives us the opportunity to do it. We have this every day.
Thank you, Warren. We have a question from Charles Bender. It's so great to see so many friends and ladies here. You're always giving your time and wisdom to our community. How can we best orient our origin to support those in need?
Chuck, really good question. And Chuck, I love your enthusiasm and energy. It's so fun around you. Thank you for all you give to EO and other. Look, I think we have to think really carefully about how we are going to use our resources in a time like benefit others. And sometimes those are members, sometimes there are people with whom we share them, and perhaps it's others in the community. I think we have to look for those opportunities. It's difficult sometimes, constrained right now in our own homes for the most part. But where we can, let's reach out through social media to those organizations, not-for-profits, NGOs that are struggling too during this time. Why? Because contributions dried up, because the support isn't there that they've had historically. And so we have to be good about finding those opportunities. But just remember, we save the planet, we save the world, we save lives, one life at a time, one interaction at a time. Just try to do every day for others. Resources. If we have a company that's surviving and doing well during this time, we really need to be that voice in our community of strength and passion. This time gives us an opportunity to set aside all of our and to really focus on our brothers and sisters who are going through something that's hard, really difficult. And we are a person who could make the difference. That's leaders. A quote that I often use: it's not enough to be just a good leader. We have to be a leader for good. This is the time we have to be a leader for good. So let's be certain that we do as much as we can, as our resources allow, to assist others in time of need. You'll find the right way. Have those discussions, and you will find your truth in that matter.
Thank you, Warren. So I'm going to ask one question, and if we can just post, we're going to do one question after that, we're going to wrap. So this is from PJ Bradley. And PJ says, and this may be impacted by your time and work in the White House, but who you have worked with, who have rebounded from hardships like this and raised others up with them?
Wow, that's a really, that's a great question. If you think of the people I've studied a lot about historically, who recovered from a real disaster, was Nelson Mandela. His life, young and fighting apartheid in prison sentence on just off the coast of Cape Town, South Africa. There he broke limestone every day. He lived in a 6x. He had a blanket and a small mattress, a chair, and stuff for his personal needs. He looked out a small. He was there 21 and a half years. When he arrived there, the white guards despised him, hoped he would die. Some of his colleagues did. But he emerged strength, and he left there. Later, he was being transferred to Polsma on the mainland in Cape Town. The very guards who did him, stood at attention and saluted him. He had won them over because he became a man. I think in this process, we have to learn to change ourselves. There are some things about us, perhaps, that could make us better leaders, strong people, more thoughtful. And during this, let's look deep within ourselves. Let's determine what we do, how we think about it. I worked for a man in the wife worked for him when he was vice president of the United States, Gerald Ford. He had been the minority leader of the House of Representatives, never wanted to be vice president or president. But he was selected to be vice president, never elected. And then in August of 1974, during the impeachment efforts for Richard Nixon, when Richard Nixon as president ultimately resigned, Gerald Ford suddenly became president of the United States. So a man who was thinking about retirement was suddenly now president of the free world. And I had a chance to watch him in both his public and private moments. And I saw him as a man of great courage, a man who overcame great difficulties and challenges. When he took office, there was high unemployment, high interest rates, real frustration in our society. And when he took office, he had substantial success. So I think there are lots of people who have overcome really interesting situations to emerge very successfully. YPO, those of us who are together in this conversation today, I know, because I know so many of you, I know you've been through difficult times before. I know you as to how you got through it and the strength and courage that you have individually. And yeah, you'll wake up some days and you wish you could stay in bed. You get up, you get dressed, and you show and you go do what you got to do. It differentiates us from lots of people. And so I applaud your leadership. I find significance in what you do. I know that you have to weather this great days again. We're going to all do this together.
Perfect for this last question, which is from Andrea Herrera. You might remember her. And she says, can you share daily that might help us stay in a servant leadership?
Andrea, how are you? I haven't talked to you for a few weeks. I hope you're doing well. I know you've gone through a difficult time with your business, a terrific leader and you're going to have a great opportunity to be successful as you go forward. Until we have to have, I always start with what I call 10-10, 10 minutes of gratefulness, 10 minutes of reading inspiration, 10 minutes of journaling that which is in your life. If you do those three things, that's a pattern and a habit that'll be good. I think you can take a minute each and for the day. Focus on one day at a time. Focus on what's going on right now. And I also want to add that as I saw this coming, I was in China, Thailand, and Vietnam in the beginning of January to the mid of January. I got home 2 days later, the announcement of the coronavirus took place. And while I'm not infected and haven't been infected, it was important for me to try to gain a perspective. And I spent some time thinking about this, finding a quiet space to think it through. And so in that process, I divided my life into the 4 buckets that I think are important: family, business, community, and self. I said, what should I concentrate on? What should I focus clearly? And so I said there were 3 of those 4 buckets that I needed to focus on. I just want them with you. Maybe it'll trigger some thought, Andrea, as you think about this, or for others who are involved in this conversation today. First, in family, the words that I chose were protection, security, organization, and discipline. The things that I'm focusing on in our family. In business, 3 words: cash, revenue, people. That has to be my focus. Me. In the community, partnership, service, idea sharing. And for me personally, 3 I just mentioned: workout, nutrition, sleep. If I can focus with laser-like precision on 12 things for our family and for my immediate, then I believe I have the chance to have a very positive mindset and to emerge from the pandemic in the best possible way. As we close this, I just want to mention we're going to be meeting again next Monday. We're going to have an opportunity to take up the principle of personal greatness, which will help you get through this. That personal principle is going to be clarity of vision. How do we actually get clear sight of where we're going. And we'll talk about very specifically what we can do every day to make that happen. So I just want to thank you. I'm so grateful that you would take a portion of your day just to hear what I have to say. I want to wish you the best. I have a strong belief that all of you in this conversation will do well, even though it's going to be a short-term struggle and it's going to be hard. Just remember, as we do hard. That's our family motto. That should be our motto as things. Thanks very much. I look forward to working with you again on my.
Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Warren, for this incredible gift in bringing together. Again, tune into the next episode of Visions on Monday, where Warren Rustand will share ways to have clarity of vision during this to continue the momentum of your life. And this is a conversation with Warren, also a conversation with each other. You can find this live stream on this Facebook page, and future episodes will be recorded. Share with your community. Share your feedback. Meet each other. So we are Warren.